Hello there, and thanks so much for joining me for another tutorial. I'm Erin Eno, and today I'm going to be breaking a habit in order to improve my loose watercolor florals. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more tutorials like this one, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Let's jump in and get started. Today I'll be painting in my Artisto watercolor sketchbook. It is a cellulose paper, but it is 140 pound. I have my Royal Talens Van Gogh paints in my palette, a jar of water and a paper towel, and I'm just going to be using one brush for this quick little painting today, and I'll be using my silver black velvet in a size 8 round. So lately I've been looking back at some of the florals I've done, and I've noticed that I've developed this habit of either doing like a composition of flowers basically just from a bird's eye view, or I'll do flower heads, a few on my page, and then just run stems down to the bottom of the page. Sometimes just to tie it all together, I'll put in some sort of a background. But I just thought, I just wanted to do something a little lighter, not necessarily with a background, but I didn't want stems all coming down. I wanted something to tie it together a little more cohesively, and I wanted to see if I could kind of break that habit that I've developed. Not that the other styles are bad, it's just I wanted something a little different to go to. So I'm going to paint a few flowers just the way I would kind of habitually do it, and I'm just going to do some yellow flowers, and I'm just going to quickly show you what I would normally do. I've got a big hunk of paint in my palette and I don't want that. That's way too much. And I'm going to use yellow ochre, and I think I will just kind of tone that down a bit with a little bit of raw umber, just a little bit. Maybe not that much. No worries, go back in with some yellow ochre. Okay, so I'm just going to start. Get some water off my brush there. And I'll just do a few flower heads like I would normally do. Okay, so I might start with one kind of almost in the center. So I'll just put a few dabs of paint down and just draw out some petals like so. I'm not going to do anything fancy here, just a couple of quick flowers just to show you kind of what I'm after here. And then I'm just going to add in a little bit of interest, which is what I would normally do, and I'm going to use light oxide red. So just with a little bit on the tip of my brush, I'll just tap some in the middle just to give it a bit of character. Okay, and we'll let that bleed out. You might go in and pick some of that yellow up just to give some little variations in tone. Okay, so we've got a head-on view. Maybe I might put a side view over here. Okay, so a couple of petals kind of on a side view, a couple of petals in the back like so. Just really rough and loose. These are just like, little flowers that I would do, and I would be sitting here just trying to get my craving for some painting out of my system. And then I might go in and throw maybe one facing down a bit, like so. Go in and tap a little of that oxide red in there. And maybe I might throw in a little bud up here somewhere, just really tiny little bud, semi-open. Again, tap a little bit of that oxide red in there. And then I can't speak. And then what I would normally do is go in with some green. So I'll mix up some sap green with a little bit of olive green, which is a nice green that I tend to gravitate to. And then I would simply paint some stems up to these flowers, like so. And they might bleed in a little bit. Have them wave a little bit too, so they're not just straight. That also adds a little bit of interest. Okay, and then what I would normally do is just pop in here and do some leaves, like so. Maybe have some kind of pointing down a little bit. Maybe some sepals hanging down off this guy here. Then I would go in with maybe some sepia and just tap in a little bit of a center here. Just like that. You wouldn't see that one was because that's kind of like a back view. Okay, so that's a pretty typical flower piece that I would do, and it's nice and it's interesting. It's got, you know, a little bit of wave in the stems. It's got flower heads facing different directions. It's got a little bud, but I just thought I just was kind of getting tired of just painting all these stems and just, you know, doing stems and flower heads. So this is where I just wanted to try something a little different and not something that I would typically do. Just kind of break this habit that I do. So I'm going to flip it over on the other side. I actually should have done it this way so you could have seen the before and after, but oh well, we're going to see the after and before because I'm going to do it on the back of this page. So in order to shake this up a bit, I am going to still start with these flower heads. Still something just simple and straightforward. Nothing fancy. I'm not going to use any more colors than I did in the previous painting. Okay, so we've got that. We'll go in with some oxide red. Just tap some here and there. And again, maybe we'll do one that's kind of facing down. We'll pull these petals out. And tap in some oxide red. Maybe put a little bit more in this guy. And we'll do a little bud up here as well. I'm not trying to make this exactly like the other one, but I just want to make it similar so you get the idea. I kind of think that this guy might be a little small. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. That ought to do it. And then we'll maybe do another one that's kind of a back view, like we did on the first painting. Okay, so still just very loose. I'm not changing anything up in the petals, or the flowers rather. And go in with the oxide red again, just to give some interest, like so. This one's looking like a little faded. Just pop a little bit more color into this guy. And maybe we'll do another head-on one down here. Pick up some of this tone just to give it, just want to pick up a little bit here just to give it a little bit of variation in tone. A little bit more yellow here. Okay, so the flowers are very loose, as you can see. Okay, no different than the first ones. In fact, these may be even a little looser. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything more fancy than the first piece. Then I'm going to go in and do the stem. But instead of doing a stem to every flower, we're just going to do one stem and have this one flowering stem. Okay, so I'm going to start it down here, and I'm going to have some wave to it. And it's going to go all the way up to this bud. And you can make it thinner as you get to the top. Like so. Now we're going to join up all the flowers. So I'm going to do a stem to this one. This is going to be kind of a back view. So I'm going to tuck the stem right up to that flower. Then maybe just draw, I keep saying draw, paint in a little I can't speak. Paint in a few squiggles for like some sepals. And then this one, you've got to imagine the center of the flower. So the center of the flower is here. So you just kind of imagine the stem coming down like this, which means it would be coming out right about here. Okay. Then we're going to make this one come off the center of the stem and down to the back of that hanging flower, just like that. And then this one can come up here. Okay, so now we've got a flowering stem rather than, you know, a bunch of stems or a bunch of flower heads and separate stems. I'm going to go in and put the sepia in now for the centers. Just a few dots of it. You want to leave some space in between. Don't just put in a solid dot of sepia for the center. So now we're going to go and put some leaves in. So seeing that this would be newer growth, the leaves would be a little bit smaller. Okay, maybe even a little one coming out of there. And some coming out of here. Like so. There might even be some coming behind this flower. Just like that. And you can also, because our flowers are light in color, you could even have a flower, you could even have a leaf coming right from the center of that stem and going on top of that flower. Now we've lost that kind of stem that led to that flower, so I'm just going to put another one in there. Just like that. I'm just playing around and kind of filling the page up with where I think I could use some leaves and some filler. Maybe another leaf kind of coming out of here that you can't see that's behind that flower. And then even if you want, you could even tuck another flower coming out. Maybe just a little bud, the tiniest little bud coming out from the very top. Just like that, and we'll just touch that with the slightest amount of green. Maybe a tiny little leaf. Like so. Just going to touch up some of these leaves I'm not happy with. Maybe another little leaf here. I'm just going to heavy this one up a bit because it's, you can kind of see that stem poking through, and that was bugging me a little. And maybe even put a little leaf coming off that guy. So there you go. There is a simple, loose watercolor floral, just all the flower heads are on one flowering stem. So if you're like me and you've developed this habit of just putting flower heads down and painting stems, give something like this a try just to kind of change things up a bit. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. And thank you so much for joining me and supporting my channel as always. And don't forget, if you're on Instagram and you give this a try, please share your work and be sure to tag me. That's it for today. Take care, and I will see you next time.